Well, thank you all for allowing me to speak with you today to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is saying yes to innovation. So you would say, oh, well, we all know that we're all going to say yes to innovation, but does that mean that it's going to translate to you an opportunity to actually open your checkbook and write a check? And so that is really what we're talking about. And so I actually started life in the government, spent 30 years in the government, in fact, and so I'm here to help, all right? But with my, you will find that the story really begins at an agency called Darpa. And some of you may not know what Darpa is, or who Darpa is, or even how a Darpa is. But DARPA stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And DARPA was founded in 1957. And the way it was founded was, it was in response to a crisis. In 1957, the unexpectedly horrible thing happened. Russia beat the United States into space. How in heaven's name did that happen? How did the Russians, a bunch of farmers without any kind of an economy to speak of, beat the US, the most technologically superior country at the time, to space? And President Eisenhower asked himself that same question. How did that happen? And what he came up with, remarkable as it may be to you right now, is the US had become too bureaucratic in its thinking. What a shock. And so what he decided to do was create an agency where it was streamlined. That in fact, the director had direct control over the dollars. In other words, the director could say yes. The director could say yes to millions of dollars. And that was a revelation. If any of you dealt with the federal government at any level, including registering your car, you will know that you'll go in a room and it's got a long line of desks with people sitting there with no, ready to stamp your thing. And if they don't say no, they pass it to the next desk, right? And then it goes on to the next desk to some unknown person who has the ability to say yes, but that person really doesn't exist. DARPA was different. You could say yes. And so what DARPA did was it took that charge and it said the mission that it would hold is that it would maintain US technological superiority. That was it. The whole mission of the agency was to maintain US technological superiority. And so to do that, they needed to create capabilities. They needed to create tech that would keep the US on the forward edge. So some of the things that DARPA actually went to do. So one of the earlier projects was in 1961 actually, was can a US naval vessel navigate at sea at a starless night? And the idea is that it needed a beacon. It needed a reference point. And that reference point, of course, was a satellite in geosynchronous orbit. And that project was called Transit. And Transit ultimately became GPS. In 1963, they started a program where they wanted government computers to talk to. You'll love this. J.C. Lickletter's project was very specific. It was a 2-page proposal, DARPA proposal, to go ahead and create a way for a government computer to use a central computer for its core computational capabilities. That a government scientist someplace could use a core computer for computational capabilities. In other words, cloud computing. That was 1963. And the system he set up to do that was the internet. And in fact, if you look at the original internet, you do the history of the internet on Google, it will say that it was the ARPANET, the Advanced Research Project Agency Network. So this small project that was to solve a single problem, i.e. develop a capability that would give US a leg up on everybody else, then ultimately all of these things morph into something else. But you don't worry about what it morphs into, you only worry about that one thing. So the things that DARPA program managers, two of my good friends here, Dr. Justin Sanchez, Dr. Dan Wattendorf, are both alpha program managers. They created some amazing things. You ought to talk to them at some point. I recruited them both to the agency, so I take personal credit for that. But the fact of the matter is that they and others like them, the goal is to find something that would actually change how business is done. So the way we actually looked at it at DARPA was, we didn't ask what the project is, who are going to do it, what resources they are, the maturity. We didn't care about any of that. We ask one question. Is it cool? Is it cool? Right? And I remember there's one program manager came with a project, and he stopped up to the doors and he said, I got a cool project. And I said, what is it? It's an invisible airplane. And so before we threw the idiot out the door, we actually sat down and said, wait a minute, let's do DARPA. Is it cool? And who in this room does not think an invisible jet fighter isn't cool? That's cool. That's really cool. All right, so I said, okay, that's cool. Second, is does it actually deliver on something that we really care about? Well, if you sit down and you say to yourself, what I really want is air dominance. If I had an invisible airplane, I'd be pretty dominant. So you say, okay, it met the second question. The third question is, how are you going to do it? And of course, when he sat down and explained it, it made perfect sense. He said, you don't care if the airplane is invisible to the naked eye, because if you're looking up in the sky and you see an F-16, that's probably too late for you because he's probably dropping a lot of fire and steel on top of your head. What you really want to do is you want to not see him 300 miles away, because that's when your radar would pick him up. Right? That's what you want to do. You want to be invisible 300 miles away so you're not picked up on a radar. And of course, that's stealth technology. And stealth technology, as you know, has revolutionized air combat right now. So those are the ideas of what we're talking about. So first ask yourself, is it cool? Whatever you're doing, ask yourself, is it cool? Because if it doesn't meet your cool factor, who the hell cares? Right? So then you come back and then you say to yourself all those other things. So we ask ourselves, is it cool? The second thing that DARPA programmers do at that point is, if in fact we believe it's cool, we then sit down with you and say, let's build out the structure of the R&D for this thing together. You don't tell us, we work with you to find out, and then we resource you enough so that you can do it. Resourcing is key. I worked with Dean Kamen to build that arm that we had talked about. The key thing of that is you find brilliant people like Dean to do the work, and you resource them so that they can actually do it. Under-resourcing is the #1 way to guarantee they're going to fail. Absolutely going to guarantee you to fail. You have to adequately resource the innovator. The second thing is you've got to stay on them. Because innovators are geniuses. The problem with geniuses, they oh, that's shiny, that's shiny, that's shiny. You got to keep them on track. So if you're like Dan Wattendorf, one of my favorite program managers, Dan would call you up every week and say, well, how the hell are you doing? And they would tell you, oh, I'm doing fine, and so on. Tell me your problems. Because if you didn't tell Dan your problems, he was going to fly down there, get in your shorts, and walk around with you for the whole day, seeing what was really going on. Because at the end of the day, managing the dollars is critical. So DARPA doesn't just give money like NIH and NSF. We actually manage the money. We actually control the dollars. There's a neat, really neat clause in every DARPA contract. DARPA doesn't give grants. DARPA only gives performance-based contracts. And in that clause it says, for any reason, at any time, without prior notice, the US government may terminate this contract. So performers listen. So the DARPA program manager can empty a room, as Justin Sanchez once did, can empty a room on a group that's not performing. Because the goal here is that the risk should be the science. That's where the risk should be. The risk shouldn't be in managing the cash. The risk shouldn't be in the quality of the scientists. The risk shouldn't be whether or not the idea is good. Those things should all be managed. The risk should be really is the science. And that's the problem with science. We all know that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The other thing that we believe in is fail early, fail fast. If you're going to go do this kind of push, if you're really going to push the ragged edge, you have to accept that you're going to fail a lot. If you don't accept failure, you shouldn't be in this business. So what we did was we recognized that PMs would have an 80% failure rate. Now, failure doesn't mean that the thing was completely bombed. You always learn from the science as you go forward, correct? So if you failed correctly, you would have learned, so when you come back a second time, you'll be that much further along. And so that was really kind of the way. That's what DARPA does. So DARPA in its 75-year history has, I can just enumerate to you a load of things for which it's done. But if you want something to carry on forward from what we heard earlier today, 80% of the things that are in this phone right here, 80% came from a DARPA program. The little thing that makes the screen turn, that was developed for pilots, jet fighter pilots. All right? As an example, Siri that's in this phone, that was developed by DARPA. So we can go on and on. So the point is that these kind of point solutions, what DARPA does is it funds it to take away the risk. That is, that can this thing work? And once it does, it's going to be assumed by other people. The driverless car was a DARPA challenge that was done. that the team that won that challenge, the DARPA driverless car challenge, the entire team was scooped up by Google. So Google's entire self-driving car department is actually poached from DARPA's successful team that won, as well as the program manager, I might add. So how then do some of these ideas come about? The ideas come about because there have to be capabilities in the world of DARPA that matter to national security. And so that's a fairly broad space. And you would say, does healthcare meet that, for example? And I would say that it actually does. And I'll give you one example only. And that is this. So when I was young, not so fat, not so ugly, I was actually in the Army. And that's me standing there. And this was in 2003. So in 2003, I was sent to Afghanistan because, we were in a war then, because they did some bad things just a couple of blocks away from here. So I was serving with the 452nd Combat Support Hospital, and a young American came in with a bad head injury, and I was taking care of him, because I'm a neurointensive care physician. And so that young fellow really had very unstable blood pressure and heart rate. And Lance Becker can give you the whole hour-long lecture on that, but I'm not going to do that. I'll let Lance do that. But it's simply called dysautonomia. That kid, that was our hospital, was not best served by being in this hospital for obvious reasons. It's tent. We needed to get him out of country, but that's a 20-hour flight to Germany. That's a 20-hour flight. So I need a drug called bromocriptine. This is an old drug developed by Lilly 1,000 years ago, and if you went to CVS and bought it, if it wasn't made by the Chinese and they were jacking the prices on you, it should be costing about, seriously, 25 cents a pill. But that is our pharmacy right there, where my red arrow is. Not the big building, by the way, not the big Connex with the big windows on it. That's the bathroom. The thing that's right next to it, that is the pharmacy. And in it, of course, very limited supply of what we had. So I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm sitting on top of this mountaintop, trying to take care of this kid, no bromocriptine. So I called over to the Air Force, God bless them. Dan was an Air Force officer at one time. They actually stuck a box of bromocriptine into the flight suit of a pilot and flew them to me. That box of bromocriptine did not cost 25 cents a pill. It probably cost like $1 billion a pill just on gasoline price alone. But I had my bromocriptine, loaded the kid on it, everything's good. But it doesn't make sense to me. I said to myself, geez, if we had a chemistry set, my PhD's in pharmacology, medicinal chemistry. Heck, if I had the formula and a chemistry set, I should be able to make my own bromocriptine and not offend anybody because it's off patent. So why don't I have a chemistry set? Why, in fact, am I dependent upon some supply officer deciding what drugs I need when he has no freaking idea? Why don't I just make whatever drugs I have? And you sit down and you say to yourself, is that an outlandish idea? The answer is no. Most small molecules, as you know, ibuprofen, atropine, Cipro, tetracycline, blah, 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 are made out of only three things: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They're organic compounds. So in theory, if I had a glass of water and a pencil, I should be able to make any old doggone thing I wanted, right? Not true. Some have sulfur in it, some have nitrogen in it, so I need an egg. So I have an egg, a glass of water, and a pencil, I should be able to make whatever I want, okay? So if I had the right enzymes, a catalyst to make the reactions go. So cut the story short, I said, we're going to come home. At that point, I got, right after I came home from Afghanistan, I said, I got orders from the Army. Guess what? You get to go to DARPA. Really cool. So there, I said, that's one of the things I want to do. I want to come up with a way that my soldiers and my Marines will always have whatever medicine they need anytime, wherever they go. And I wanted them to have it so that it's fresh and it's ready to go, and they're not dependent on any supply chain. They just have this thing. To do that, we needed a machine that would make the drugs on site. And so I talked to a couple of buddies of mine. They're good buddies. One is Klaus Jensen's chair of chemical engineering at MIT, and the other one's Tim Jameson, chair of chemistry at MIT. And we realized that you could distill this problem down to, one, I got to have a machine. That mixes and stirs and all that kind of good stuff. And I have to have a chemistry that actually takes advantage of this and allows you to start from starting materials like acetone or salt or things that never go bad, and then just make the drug. And so by putting those two things together, it became a chemistry problem and a chemical engineering problem, bounded problem, that's it. And you put them together and you get that machine right there. That machine, when you put it all together, it's modular. So this is the synthesis part, this is the purification part, and that's the tablet maker. If you put all three together, you can see that there's empty space here. You kind of got to stick them together. It's going to be about the size of a refrigerator. That machine right there will make 3,000 Cipro tablets a day. 3,000 will chug out 3,000 a day. It will make 1 million doses of atropine a day. It'll make 24,000 doses of Prozac a day, and on it goes. So right now, that machine will make 16 different active pharmaceutical ingredients, and it will make, right now, Cipro from end to end. And so it's ready to go to FDA. And what I like about it is it liberates my soldiers. They don't have to worry about logistics for anything on it. And every one of my pharmacies in the military, on ship, in a submarine, they'll go ahead and make whatever drug they want, whenever they want, and not be dependent upon anybody else. They can control their own costs. They can control their own logistics, blah, 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 and they can respond to any threat. If they need only Cipro, the machine will just crank out Cipro. Forget that you're not making atropine, because you don't need it. And that's the point. And can you also do it for biologics? The answer is yes. So this is the Biologics Platform. It is a cell-free system. You go ahead and just throw in whatever primer you want, and it'll chug it out. Right now, it can make a gram of erythropoietin in about 16 hours. And erythropoietin is always given at microgram amounts, and it'll fit in that Pelican case right there. So these concepts really are not new. It's a whole idea of how can we change the structure of what our threat space is so that we can give ourselves a leg up. And so in all these things, we're always told, no, it won't work. For us at Darpa, the first question was it cool? Was it cool that you could actually make whatever drug you want, whenever you want? And for us, as a soldier in the field, the answer is yes. And then why not? Why not? Why be dismissive? If somebody came to you and said, hey, I found a cure for hepatocellular carcinoma, not a treatment, a cure, you would say, that's cool. Then why are you not finding every possible way to say yes? Why are you shooting the guy down? Why are you trying to find out, well, you got this other guy working for you, and he's ugly, so we're not going to give you any money? I mean, why don't we find a way to say yes? Because that's what truly innovation is. If you talk about all the people who really innovated, they'll tell you how many people have slammed the door in their face. And you say, why is that happening? Because if it's cool, if it's a phone that's a computer that will hang on your hip, why wouldn't you say yes? And that's the point. Thank you.